Okay, this is part 3 of the ancient Greeks, and this painting right here is Zeus and the abduction of Europa. Europa was later, her name was used to name Europe. So Zeus had disguised himself as a bull, and he liked to have affairs with women, and he had all kinds of different tricky ways to seduce them or to abduct them. The eagle is sort of a symbol of Zeus, and he was always trying to hide from his wife Hera, also known as Juno, her Roman name. So this is one beautiful painting of it by Jean-Baptiste Pierre. France had a lot of great painters as well. Okay. This is another version by Noel Nicholas Coypel from 1727. You know, the bull Zeus abducting Europa, and there's a big fanfare and commotion about it all. Here's Zeus having an affair with a lady by the name of Io, and he comes to her like in a cloud, like a bear. Okay. There's a whole bunch of this sort of stuff in Greek mythology. All these stories about Zeus abducting women and having affairs and hiding them from Juno and Hera. This is Adonis, the shepherd boy who was a hunter, a very handsome, strong man, and Aphrodite, or Venus, you know, the goddess of love. She falls in love with him. So this is sort of the other way around. Now the woman's seducing the man. And he doesn't want to bother with her. He says, look, I'm going hunting, and that's what I want to do. Don't bug me. But she uses her trickery to seduce him. And after she seduces him, she has a vision that if he goes hunting again the next day, he's going to be killed by a boar. But he ignores her, goes hunting again, and he's killed by a boar. But that's the story of Venus and Adonis. So a handsome young guy, sometimes called an Adonis. Okay. Aphrodite, Venus, goddess of love. Okay, so here we go. This one is Perseus, another ancient Greek hero, and he had slain Medusa, the lady with snakes for hair, and when anybody looks at her, they turn to stone, and he later took her head, he had severed it from her body, and he would show it to his enemies while he himself would look in the mirror of his shield, and he could turn them to stone. That's sort of the point of this picture here. The next one is Perseus and Andromeda. So Andromeda was like the most beautiful princess in the land, and she was being sacrificed because her father had angered Poseidon, the god, and Perseus then saved her. He's sort of riding in on a winged horse like Pegasus. In the original story, he wore the winged shoes of Hermes, but in the paintings, he's usually on the horse, and there's the beautiful Andromeda. Okay. I'm just showing you there's tons and tons of this stuff in Greek mythology, and you'll be amazed once you study it more how much carryover there is to more modern literature and stories. So what I'm saying is if you want to read English literature, you really, to understand it well, should know Greek mythology and the Bible, because so much of it comes out of that. Here's the story of Theseus, another ancient Greek hero. So this is Theseus, not to be confused with Perseus. Theseus finding the sword of his father. This one's by Nicholas Poussin from 1638. And Theseus was half immortal and half mortal, like a lot of the ancient Greek heroes. One of their parents had been one of the gods, and that gave them special abilities. So anyways, he's finding the sword of his father that had been hidden. And of course, that reminds one of, you know, King Arthur pulling the sword out of the ground as part of his rite of passage as he's becoming a hero. And he went on to do a lot of big things. One of the founders of Athens. Ariadne, the princess of Crete, gives him a ball of yarn that he's going to use to find his way out of the maze. So here is again Theseus with Ariadne, one of her friends, and he's going to get that ball of yarn to find his way out of the maze so he can fight the Minotaur. The Minotaur had been devouring like 7 Athenians every year, and it was the son of sort of the wife of the king of Minos and the bull owned by the king of Minos. Okay. And Ariadne had fallen in love with Theseus, and that's why she helped him. However, okay, so here's Theseus fighting the Minotaur, and Theseus was successful, and he slew the Minotaur. And then he had to find his way out of the maze. He used the ball of yarn from Ariadne. However, then on the island of Naxos, which is also a book company that makes audiobooks, he deserted her. Theseus ran off. There's his boat. And she was left by herself, but luckily Dionysus came. The Greek god Dionysus, or Bacchus, came, and he fell in love with Ariadne. He married her and had kids with her, and he later took her up to Mount Olympus. Anyways, the reason I show this is the contrast here between Dionysus. Dionysus in general is portrayed as the god of revelry and getting drunk and alcohol and wine and crazy parties where people behave quite bad. And he's also very violent. They named the theater, the Greek theater, after him, the Dionysia. Okay, so although there's some good things associated with Dionysus, he was good to Ariadne. He can be a lot of fun at parties, and the theater named itself after him. There's also sort of an evil, cruel, violent, bad side to Dionysus, and I show him here now in contrast to Apollo. Apollo was sort of the Greek god of wisdom, and he was a great musician. He was like the equivalent of a super rock star of his day. Okay? Apollo crowned by victory. And here's another one, the Apollo of Belvedere. Sometimes it was called the Pythian Apollo, with the idea that he had just shot an arrow at a python. Okay, but this statue, the Apollo of Belvedere, was very famous and popular. This is, a Roman copy of it. Most of the Greek statues were sort of broken by the time we tried to find them and put them together. Here's Apollo with two muses, and again, he's often portrayed like this rock and roll star, Greek god. All the women are in love with him, and he's such a great musician. But he's also wise and smart and philosophical. Here's one of Apollo, the Greek god, with 5 nymphs attending to him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, there's 6. Okay, and this is a statue in the Palace of Versailles. And of course, it's sort of an allusion to, King Louis. Okay, here is Apollo pursuing Daphne. And she does not want to be with Apollo. And she turns herself into a tree. Here's the statue of it by Bernini. So these last couple of paintings, they kind of put Apollo, Gian Lorenzo Bernini was like the Michelangelo of the 1600s. They kind of put Apollo in a little bit of a bad light, abducting women and all this kind of stuff. But, in a bigger scope, as a Greek god, he was more the god of reason and rational, intelligent thought. And Ayn Rand wrote a great essay. It's in her book, The Return of the Primitive, where she talks about how noble mankind is like Apollo. And she likened that to the astronauts and the engineers and NASA and all that stuff. And she said that, degenerate man, decadent man is a drunkard, a stoner, an alcoholic, a screw-up. He's more like Dionysus. And she felt like the revelers at Woodstock, the concert in the 1960s, were a bunch of low-life, drug-addict scumbags. And she thought, the engineers at NASA planning the landing on the moon, 1969 and whatnot, were people doing something good. And she talked about how if a man has a useful purpose and goal in his life, he doesn't want to be getting drunk or stoned or being a degenerate, decadent, debauched. He wants to do good things. So in general, Apollonian sort of means good and thoughtful and well done, and Dionysian sort of means wild and drunkard and crazy. So I hope you enjoyed that.